Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on it. I know I haven't posted in quite a while, but this year I have picked up reading. So I wanted to go over the books that I read in January and just hop right into it. So I've been reading a lot more lately instead of watching TV or watching a show or something. And I've been getting really into it. And I love it. I fell right back into reading. So welcome to my couch. Get nice, comfy, and cozy. Go grab a coffee or something. Look at this cute mug. Isn't this the most adorable rainbow unicorn mug? It says, "I don't believe in humans." That is just so freaking cute. I love it. I'm obsessed. This year introduced me to Colleen Hoover, who is now my favorite author, as of right now at least. It was a lot. I read 10 books, and considering I haven't read since, oh my god, years ago, that's a lot of books in my opinion. So I'm going to start out with all of the Colleen Hoover books I read first, and then I will tell you how I rated them. Everyone on YouTube, I started watching YouTube book videos like Larue reads. I love her channel. And Haley Pham, I think is her name. I like her channel too. And then Steph Bower. I was watching all of their book recommendation videos just because their taste in reading is similar to what I like. I prefer romances for the most part, but not like super cheesy romances. You know, the good romances that are more realistic. So the first book I read was Ugly Love, which is, honestly, this is such a popular and hyped book on TikTok and YouTube. Everyone and their mother loves this book, and honestly, it lives up to the hype. I have the really pretty matte cover. I love just like feeling the books and the textures and then just smelling the books. I know other people do that too, I'm not the only one. And I just love, also I love having physical copies of books. I know a lot of people have a Kindle and they read books on their Kindles because it's cheaper, but I just love having physical copies of books, especially paperbacks for some reason, especially the matte paperbacks. It just feels so nice and luxurious. I just love the way they feel. But this book, Ugly Love, is about this guy named Miles and this girl named Tate. And Miles is a pilot. He meets Tate. It's the brother's best friend trope. So Tate has to move in with her brother because she's in school and she's also working as a nurse. And then Miles is his friend / neighbor. And they end up meeting and kind of get into this friends with benefits type of situation. But Miles doesn't want a relationship. He is so closed off. And the book goes back and forth between Tate's perspective, and then it goes back in the past to Miles' perspective. So it's two different point of views, but it's, for the most part, the main point of view is from Tate's point of view in the present day. I really like Colleen Hoover's writing style. You can read her books really easily, nothing's confusing, and a lot of her books are from a dual, a lot of her books are also from a dual point of view, which I personally love. And I don't want to give any spoilers away, so that's all I'm really gonna say, but such a good book. A lot of people said this book made them cry, and I can totally see why. I would highly recommend this book. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. So good. And the next book I read by Colleen Hoover was Confess. This book was also really good. I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars because I just didn't think it was quite 5 stars. I didn't think it was as good as Ugly Love, but it was really good, and I did love this book a lot. This book follows, what's her name? Auburn Reed, and the guy in the book, his name is Owen Gentry. Owen Gentry is an artist. He owns an art gallery. People submit anonymous confessions to his art gallery, and then he paints pictures based on those anonymous confessions, which I think is really cool. And also the book has random art pictures in it, which I think is just super cool. And this book is just written in Auburn's point of view, but it's still really good. I went into this book blind, so I would recommend going into this blind for the most part. I didn't really read the synopsis on the back. but I do highly recommend this. They actually turned this book into a show. The confessions that were randomly submitted to this book were actually submitted by fans of Colleen Hoover's anonymously, which I think that's super cool. Hey guys, so I realized that part of my video did not save, which sucks. So in this clip, welcome to my bed, by the way, and my comfy editing clothes, sorry. So I'm just gonna go over the other 2 books that I read real quick from Colleen Hoover. I read Verity, 5 out of 5 stars, such a good book. This is a thriller. It follows Lowen. She meets Jeremy, and Lowen is a struggling writer. Jeremy's wife is actually Verity, and she is also a very successful writer, but Verity got into this horrible accident, and now she's basically in a coma, and she can't do anything for herself. So Jeremy and basically his company, they decide to hire Lowen to finish up Verity's very popular book series. So Lowen goes over to Jeremy's house, Verity's house. She goes through her office to find some notes and stuff to help her finish the book, and she ends up finding Verity's manuscript. And that's where the book gets very interesting, and she starts reading Verity's manuscript about her life, and so the book kind of is in Lowen's perspective, but then when you read the manuscript, it's in Verity's perspective. So this is just such an interesting book. I read this in less than 24 hours. It is such a page turner. It is so good. By the way, I am team manuscript. If you know, you know. Highly recommend, 5 out of 5 stars. This is also different than Colleen Hoover's other books because most of her books are romances, and this is a thriller. But it's not a scary thriller. It's just like a little spooky, kind of creepy. But highly recommend, super good. Other Colleen Hoover book that is my number 1 right now out of all of the ones that I read so far, It Ends With Us. Love this. Pick this up, read it right now. It is so good. Hands down, 5 out of 5 stars. It is about this girl named Lily, and then it talks about Lily's past and her relationship with this guy named Atlas from when they were basically in high school, and then in the present time it talks about her relationship with Ryle. So the whole book is written in Lily's point of view, and this is just such a good book. It's so much more than the romances that are in this book. This book does get on the topic of abuse, so trigger warnings for that, but it is such a good book. I related so much to the main character, Lily, and this book was also a very personal book for Colleen herself, and it is just such a beautiful book. It made a lot of people cry. This book is so good. 5 out of 5 stars. Read this book. So good. Next Colleen Hoover book I read was Heartbones. Look at this cover. It is just so beautiful. This cover is just so beautiful. Like, look at this. It's just so pretty. And this book is like, the pages are nicer too for some reason. They're more slick and they're just nicer. I love that. But anyways, this book is about a girl named Bea. She meets this guy named Samson, and she has to go stay with her dad because of something that happened. So she stays with her dad over the summer. She's really young. She's like 18, 19 or something like that. And she has to go stay with her dad for the summer. And she ends up meeting Samson, who lives next door. So this is a good summer read. It's not a happy summer read. It's definitely not a happy book, but because it takes place literally on the beach over the summer, that's why it's a good summer read. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I did like the book a lot. It wasn't my favorite Colleen Hoover book. I wasn't obsessed with the main characters. Bea herself, I was questioning some of the things she decided to do, especially near the end of the book. And Samson, I just felt like, I won't even mention that. I liked him at first until the plot twist came, and then I just didn't really like him after that. Nevertheless, I still think it's a good book. I do recommend you reading it. It's definitely not as intense as It Ends With Us or Verity or Ugly Love. It's not as intense as any of the other books actually that I mentioned from Colleen Hoover, but it's still really good, and there still is a plot twist. I didn't see the plot twist coming in this book at all. So this was a good book. I do recommend. It just wasn't my favorite. I read November 9th. Again, this has such a pretty cover. This is actually the new cover because it had an old cover. It had an old cover that was more orange and looked like more fall vibes, but this gives you more like all year round vibes, and I love it. I love the matte feel. It's just so nice. This book I loved. I gave it a 4.5 stars out of 5. Again, this wasn't my favorite Colleen Hoover book, but I did like it better than Heartbones. And I actually liked it better than Confess as well, just a little bit. Confess was also really good though. This book follows this girl named Fallon, and she meets this guy named Ben. And Ben is an aspiring writer, and he wants to write a novel. So they end up meeting on November 9th, and they decide to meet each other on every November 9th, but not communicate the rest of the year. So they don't have each other's cell phone numbers, they don't have each other's social media, so they don't communicate at all whatsoever, and they live in 2 different locations. So they meet each other every year on November 9th, regardless of what's going on. They meet each other on November 9th at a specific location, and they hang out with each other all day. They're basically like a couple, but only for this one day. And then the whole book goes through different November 9ths. There's several years that it shows you, and it basically only shows you that day, different November 9ths. And I thought that was super interesting in this book. That's why I actually wanted to read it, because I haven't ever heard of a book like that before. And I did really like the main characters. I wasn't in love with Ben just because of what he did in the book, which I won't say. And I did like Fallon up until the end. I felt like she shouldn't have done what she did or made the decision she did in the end. But I can't say anything else because I don't want to give away spoilers. But this book was really, really good. The plot twist in this book I also didn't see coming. This book is also in dual perspective, so you get to see Fallon's point of view and Ben's point of view, which I love. I actually loved both of the characters so much for the majority of the book. And then when I found the plot twist, I wasn't in love with Ben after that, but I still liked them. I just wasn't obsessed with them together as a couple. Like, them as a person, I liked their character. Like, I like Fallon separate from Ben's, but I just didn't really love them as a couple, if that makes sense. But this was still such a good book. I am going to be rereading this on November 9th, because why not? And yeah, good book, highly recommend. All right, so now we're going to get into the non-Colleen Hoover books, which obviously most of the books I read were Colleen Hoover just because I became obsessed with her writing after Ugly Love, so sorry. I read Beetry by Emily Henry. This book, 5 out of 5 stars. I loved this book. Again, this is also a good summer read just because this is also a good summer read just because it literally takes place on the beach over the summer. But the cover is actually a little bit deceiving because they're actually in Michigan. They're not in a tropical climate or anything, but it's about this girl named January, and she is a writer, and she has a rival in college who is also a writer named Augustus Everett. He writes literary fiction, and she writes romance novels. So something happens to her. She ends up having to move into this beach house in Michigan for the summer, and then Gus ends up being her next door neighbor, and they challenge each other to write a book in each other's writing genre. So they take each other out on these dates to help each other get into that writing style. So January takes Gus out on a lot of rom-com dates, like, oh, let's go to the carnival and do all these cheesy things, but cute and fun. So that type of thing. And then he takes January out to go interview like cult members and weird stuff like that. And obviously it's a romance, so you kind of can guess what happens. But I loved the book, so I highly recommend. I don't want to give anything else away, but that's the main gist of the book, and it's so good. I can't wait to read more from Emily Henry. Next book, I read The Invisible Life of Addie Larue. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars, and I'll tell you why. Because this book was so overly hyped on TikTok and on YouTube, and I had really high hopes for this book because it sounded so interesting to me. It's about this girl, Addie Larue, and she ends up making this deal with a dark god or dark whatever he is. So it's partially fantasy, and she ends up wording her wish wrong, and she ends up becoming immortal. And she lives forever. The book dates all the way back from like the 1600s when she was just a kid, and then it goes all the way to present day. I think 2014 is when present day is in the book. So it flips back and forth with the timelines, which I liked. I really liked reading the present day more than the past. And it just basically tells you how she survives through all those years. The thing is, she's immortal, but every time she meets someone, they forget who she is almost instantly. Like as soon as they put a door in her face or she walks away, they forget who she is and they have no idea. So she goes through all these years of her life just trying to survive. And then one day, there's one guy in the present that remembers who she is. And so that part of the book was really interesting to me. I didn't love Victoria Schwab's writing style. It felt like kind of repetitive to me, and parts of the book just felt a little boring. Like I was forcing myself to read it. So it gets more interesting when, what's his name? I can't think of his name, the guy that she meets. But once she meets him, the book kind of picks up a little more. I do recommend this book. It's definitely an interesting book, and I think it's still a good read. It just definitely wasn't my favorite, and I don't know if I would be rereading it, but I think the concept of the book is just good. I just think it could have been shortened. I think a lot of stuff was just kind of being too repetitive, and that's why I didn't give it like a higher rating. But other than that, I still think it's a good read, and I would recommend still that you read the book. All right, my last two books that I read in January are both Taylor Jenkins Reid books, and they are Daisy Jones and the Six and The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I'll tell you right off the bat, both of these books were 5 stars for me, hands down. Also, every book in this video is pretty much mostly hyped books because I didn't know what to read, so I just went on TikTok and YouTube and found out what people are recommending based on what I know I like to read, which is mostly romance. So let's first talk about Daisy Jones and the Six. Also, both of these books are actually historical fiction books. They're not really romance books. But nevertheless, I loved both of them. Daisy Jones and the Six is about this band called Daisy Jones and the Six. Daisy Jones, the singer. The Six is a band. Actually, the lead singer of the band his name is Billy, and they end up becoming one. So they end up joining together and becoming one band. And this book is just so interesting to me because it's written in interview style. So all of the characters in the book are talking, and it's basically like someone's interviewing them and they're all talking about the past. So this book is actually based in the 70s mostly, and it just talks about the band and their albums and stuff that happened to the band and how they wrote their songs. And I just think it's so interesting. There is a slight romance in this book, but the main story is just about the characters, mainly Daisy and then Billy, the lead singer of the Six, and basically their upbringing and how they came about to be a band and what happened in the band. And then it also tells where they are now. So they're basically giving an interview and talking about the past. Again, it is based in the 70s. I love this book. I love the story. I love the characters. A lot of people also listen to the Audible version of this book. I didn't love it. I was just getting kind of bored with it. I listened to about half of it and I was just getting kind of bored. I actually just prefer reading the book myself and interpreting the book the way I want to interpret it, I guess, or how I think someone's going to say a certain line. That's just kind of what I prefer. But you can tell this book was inspired a lot by Fleetwood Mac. Like the girl on the cover, Daisy, she looks and reminds me of Stevie Nicks so much. And the author even tells you like how much she loved the Rumors album by Fleetwood Mac, which was their biggest album. And you can just tell the whole book was basically inspired by Fleetwood Mac, which I think is totally cool because I love Fleetwood Mac. But this book, 5 out of 5 stars. I highly recommend. I love this book so much. All right, last book, also Taylor Jenkins Reid, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I love this book. This book is actually based in the 50s, I'm sorry. This book is based in the 50s. This came out actually before Daisy Jones and the Six. So this one's based in the 50s, this one's based in the 70s. This one is obviously about Evelyn Hugo, and it's also written in an interview style, but a little bit different because this book has a lot more characters than this one. This one is telling you about this girl named Monique, and she is a writer / reporter, and she meets up with Evelyn Hugo, and Evelyn tells her that she wants to tell Monique her autobiography and basically her life story. Evelyn is this really famous beautiful actress from the 50s, and she's basically like this Hollywood glam, kind of like Marilyn Monroe, like that kind of vibe, where she's such an icon. But yeah, she's this really beautiful woman, actress, and she wants to tell Monique her life story, her autobiography. So the whole book is basically Monique asking her questions, and then Evelyn answering her and telling her about everything that happened in the industry, telling her about her 7 husbands and why she had 7 husbands. And it's just such a unique and compelling story, and everything that Evelyn and Hugo went through. I think it's just so interesting, so unique, and I love it. This was such a beautiful story, a beautiful book. So I definitely recommend this book. 5 out of 5 stars. I love this book so much. Yeah, that was everything I read this month. I read 10 books total. If I had to recommend my top books that I read this month, I would definitely say The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Daisy Jones and the Six, and then it's a toss-up between Ugly Love and It Ends With Us. If you like more just solely romance-based books, go with Ugly Love. If you like something more about the main character but also a little bit of romance, go with It Ends With Us. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you like these types of videos, let me know, comment below. Follow me on my social media. My Instagram is at BrielleMarie20. No, it's not. My Instagram is at BrielleMarie17. So follow me on there. Check out my music links down below. I will be posting more content soon. If you like these book videos, again, just let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.